Hey, welcome to the first Watson weekend. With me is our host, Rick, Jack Kiefer, and Marty Armstrong. Ready to say hello, guys? How's it going, Rick?
We're doing great here. If you're live with us, first of all, thanks for coming out. The Watson Weekend is kind of a bookend to the Watson Weekly podcast. If you are not listening to the Watson Weekly podcast, I don't know what are you even here? I don't know what the story is. But anyway, the Watson Weekend is an irreverent take on the e-commerce news of the week. It's meant to be a little bit more light and funny. And Jack said it was a little bit like Dancing with Stars, except none of us are stars.
And I
So
can't dance, so therefore,
Minor details.
yep.
it's a huge
I'm
issue.
I'm Jack Kiefer. I sold my first book in Gopher Space in '94 when I was like 3 or 4 years old, and been kind of in the ecom game ever since.
Go for space.
Go for
Gopher
space. I like
Space.
that. So Marty
Is it
Armstrong has
Gopher
been in
or Gopher?
e-commerce for give or take around 20 or so years. Known these guys for quite a while. I have not sold any book on Go for Space, but I do miss the fact that, or I regret the fact that I missed that opportunity.
Yeah. Did
What
you
about
sell
you,
anything
Rick?
on CompuServe?
Yeah,
CompuServe? No, Jack.
No,
That's
not on
yeah.
CompuServe.
No, the first table of contents for one of our big cyclopedic dictionaries was on CompuServe, Prodigy, and AOL until I found Gopher Space.
That's great. No, my background is I've been in technology for many years. I was on my first bulletin board system in 1986. Um, just before everyone was on dial-up, and I had a BBS on a 300 baud modem, and then now we are live streaming across the world, which is a cool thing. So I've been in e-commerce for 23 years. Really happy to meet everyone. Hopefully you will stay tuned in, and let's get this party started.
So where do we want to go? I think one of the key things that we've been talking about is it's been a quick year, right? So a lot has happened. There's a lot going on today. What's been the key things that you've pulled out of 2023? Marty, I'm going to kick off and start with you. What are the things you've liked, the things you've disliked, the things you fear, and the things that keep you up at night?
Oh, geez. That's a pretty broad brush that you painted there with me there, Vinny. So listen, I'll just let me level set when I'm comparing myself here against Rick, the content machine, and Jack, who's been around, probably started about 20 different businesses and coded them all himself, rolling up his sleeves. I do not generate content very well, and I do not code. So that kind of level sets where I'm at in this spectrum of group here. But this year
You
I
do make the
say,
deal to make everybody money.
well,
that's
yeah. So there you
appreciated.
go. I appreciate that, Jack. So I come in on the deal end. So yeah, I'm much more of a biz dev, corporate strategy deal guy, and so that's kind of the lens in which I look through how the industry is evolving. I'm also very much my history is very much on the vendor side, technology side, platform side, service provider. I'm not traditionally on the retailer or brand side, even though obviously I've worked with them plenty throughout my career. And so when I look at like this last, if we're kind of like taking a broad brush on what has happened over the course of the year, I think it's hard not to see the big behemoths of the industry continuing to make their moves and voluntary, involuntary evolution of the space, right? So we've seen a number of things happen on the Shopify front. Amazon continues to go down its, ex Bezos period of life. Then there's like smaller levels of drama and pockets of drama throughout the industry. Flexport probably being the one that's given at least us, our little group here, the most interesting level of drama that we followed. So we could probably start on a number of different levels, but I'd say the biggest no shock for me was if you kind of just take a step back and go back over the course of say, the last 3 years or so, right? So you've had this wave of like right pre-COVID, right? E-commerce was kind of tracking on a certain level. The industry was generating what it was generating. And then all of a sudden COVID hits. We have this kind of like global pause. And then all of a sudden this, huge spike in e-commerce, all the powers that be start making big movements, right? Whether it's Amazon and how they're scaling up, right, from their warehouses and fulfillment side, and Shopify saying the world is never going back. This is always going to be the way it is. And they start making strategic decisions under that premise.
Hold on. I'm feeling a dance party.
A dance party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is going on?
Oh God. All right. So we're gonna go.
Yeah.
This goes back to the
So
conversation we had off camera.
We're going to let Rick do that. Hey, but you picked up on a good point there, Marty, and that, so I'm more of the operator of the group. And what I've seen over kind of the past year is a crap economy. I'm working with a PE firm who owns a high-end furniture manufacturer and retailer. And we've got 2 big showrooms in LA. So writer's strike has crushed us.
Yeah.
So you see, the economy is not really that great. Interest rates are high. You see a lot of big tech firms laying people off. You're reading about it with the banks and everything else. So really the theme for us has been, how do we make the business more efficient? How do we get the tools out that require less work to do the work that you need to do? And I think that's really over the last couple of years where I've seen the most innovation in a lot of different platforms. So you've got a lot of great SaaS solutions, but the problem is that people underestimate the amount of work that it takes to actually run a SaaS solution. So we've been fully focused on all sorts of different automation. So as everybody's ready to do what they're doing, we could do it with less people and do it more efficiently.
So at the beginning of the year, everyone was talking about profitability, and that's going to be the big thing that we're all going to be talking about. That kind of feels like it's a couple of years away. Is efficiency the next big sexy, Jack?
Well, I mean, I am always bringing sexy back. So in all reality, every business needs to be efficient, because whether you're in good times and you're bolstering your balance sheet, or you're in down times, you've just got to find more efficient methods to do what you're doing. And the big talk is about AI, and you hear Musk saying with all sorts of AI.
Fucking bingo! Yeah.
We have a winner.
Jack Kiefer. How many minutes? 8 minutes.
8 minutes until
8 minutes,
the
10
AO
seconds.
card is called.
But when you look at it, and you look at really what happens when you automate the crap out of everything, you really start to shed a lot of jobs. And I was listening to or reading something that Musk wrote, and he said, the whole word economy is based on the individual output of people. And the problem is, once you displace a lot of people, how do you even define the word economy? So although I hate buzzwords, and I'm going to shoot myself for saying that early and getting bingo already. But the reality is, I have seen some really cool practical. I ordered my Cybertruck 8 hours after it was announced. So my 4-year anniversary is coming up like in mid-November of waiting.
Here's the real question.
Patience is a virtue.
Have you got a blue tick on your Twitter account? Have you paid the $8?
Oh, hell no. No, I avoid social media like the plague. I have Twitter, but, I only follow it when I need to find out about, inside information about my Eagles. That's about it.
Eagles. Let's not bring up the loss this week. We won't talk about that.
Go Birds. Little minor bump in the road. But listen, I think the main thing, I'll put a button on what I was touching on before, and what I think Jack was putting like a nice finer point on before. I think the reality is, like, we're just seeing a return to the mean, so to speak, right? We're having a reaction after such a long time of like a ZERP industry, and you're having, a certain level of criteria in which companies, public or private, are being valued at and or judged at on a certain level of kind of growth, right? Now it's all shifting back to profitability. And what does that turn back to, right? So then you get into cost cutting mode, you find levels of efficiency. The funny thing is, efficiency has always been important, to Jack's point. It's just that no one was judged on it before, right? People were judged on what your top line growth is, what the kind of big whiz bang movement and shiny penny is that you're selling. Now it's getting back down to brass tacks. Unfortunately, companies are are having to tighten their belts, from the retailers to the vendors and providers working with them. And it is causing some carnage along the way, and it's going to continue. And you see that in the broader economy, and you're seeing it within the e-commerce industry in general. So what we're experiencing right now, I think, is less about the next wave of kind of technology, so to speak, or next wave of innovation. It's really reactionary to where the overall economy has gone over the last couple of years. And they're just shifting to the next thing. Venture capitalists got to find the next thing to invest in. Boom, buzzword, right? AI, et cetera. Other companies have to figure out a way to get more efficient as they're laying people off because they can't justify the cost anymore. AI, efficiency. Reality is they always should have been operating efficiently to some degree, and they just haven't because they weren't forced to, and now they are.
So what are you seeing in deal flow, Marty? I mean, I know like VCs are down, PE firms are trying to figure out, where they can get a 2 or 3 banger instead of a 5 or 6 banger. So the IPO market's been pretty dry for the last year. Are you seeing other stuff in the private markets?
No, I mean, I think, and I know Rick has had some exposure to this as well. So I wouldn't say, I think the reality is like everything is just shifting, right? There's still plenty of money. I mean, a lot of people call it dry powder or whatever it is, right? There's money out there to be invested. But as the stock market has kind of gone a certain way, and you got, interest rates going another way, it's just shifting to where it's getting invested, right? So the high growth, high risk investment cycle over the last number of years has just essentially kind of paused. Is it going to be dead forever? No, right? There's going to be new things that just shifting to what they think is going to be the super high growth. And that's where you get the buzzword AI stuff for. So I think there'll be plenty of investment. There's a little bit of a pause here. IPOs will probably be, scattered here and there. The ones that look a lot better, right? The SPAC, so to speak, kind of thing is kind of shifted down, right? The highly speculative stuff. The things that look and feel better, or the things that have just been around long enough where they have to IPO, right? They literally they've got no other avenue. They can't exit or anything else. Those are going to be the things that fill up instead of the opportunistic, hey, we're way too early, but people are rewarding any IPOs. So that kind of stuff has stopped. And the same thing with the super crazy high multiple valuations where you don't really have to prove a lot. All that stuff is paused, but there's still money to invest out there in the world. And again, it's just shifting a little bit. That's all.
So
I had a great conversation with CEO of a MarTech company. They're like probably about a $250 million recurring revenue business. So really nice sized business, but they've been continuing to grow. And the challenge is that they're not going to get paid, just like you said, on a multiple for that growth. So they've gone through and they've cut the crap out of their headcount. They're not investing, cut out employee perks, and they're hoping to get a 2 to 3 times EBIT with a company that really is kind of a leader in the space.
So what have been the shining lights this year?
7 to 8.
So we've seen a lot of the challenge, but there's been some shining lights. I mean, you talk about overvalued. How do you think Klaviyo did this year? Shopify, they're kind of taking a step into a new realm, and are they ready for it?
I have been waiting for Shopify to be ready for enterprise for like 15 years. And every couple of years they say they're ready for it. They own 99% of kind of, the sub $100,000 a year market. And it'll be interesting to see because that market is wide open for Shopify. If they actually make the right investments, make the right moves. And I think shedding logistics probably is a good step in the right direction.
Ah, speaking of shedding logistics, let's
What a segue!
The man who has a dot on his LinkedIn profile, probably one of those powerful logistics engines.
So what is a dot? Does that mean
leaders
that
in
he
America
is above everybody else and he doesn't have to define himself? Is that like Prince?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Now he's just
I mean, he started in Amazon in '99. He went to Auburn. What the hell? War Eagles. Go ahead. SEC. I love it. So education. Ruh-roh, Flexport. Wah wah.
Yeah. That's listed as education. That's interesting.
It is.
I think it's a pretty savage.
It is the worst education he's had in a long time. And it all got started. I mean, you remember, like, this whole shit show, like, really got kicked off from this Toby note we saw earlier this year. This is I call this as the side quest memo. Here's what our main quest is. Am I sharing this? Yeah, I think this is working.
And you're speaking out loud. It's just not in your head.
Our main quest is to make commerce simpler. What we have is too many damn managers. These managers are setting up side quests. Larger companies can be inefficient. We bought this thing. Now this guy, it's Dave Clark. He's gonna take. Oh, oops, nope, he's not gonna take it over. What do we learn from all this?
That shipping stuff is expensive and really hard to do and doesn't get you good multiples. You know, everybody talked about asset light, but the reality is there's a dirty part of the business that just needs to be delivered and handled until we get full 3D printing. And, you know, that's not too far out in the distant future.
Yeah, I think logistics is just, it's, you know, to state the obvious, it's freaking hard, right? It's a hard business to be in. It's a hard business to scale and grow. And
it's a hard knock life.
Right. I mean, like, the reality is, like, you could have a software. I mean, they were going down this track of having a software specific business, right? And, you know, and that had a level of media darling status to it and it had a trajectory to it. And some point along the way, they felt like, hey, let's take a big swing. And they did. And
we got huge
pretty
money,
quickly
like,
after decided
a bunch of other people investing in this.
Yeah, they decided this wasn't the swing they wanted to take any longer, right? And again, I think the ground was shifting underneath of them, and they didn't want to become an actual logistics company. They decided they really just wanted to be a software company. And oh, by the way, now I want to lend. So I don't know. I think it's a microcosm of you know, Shopify. You could argue Shopify kind of went down this road a little bit, right? With the go buy deliver, we're going to be big, we're going to scale, we're going to do everything for everybody, get into logistics. And then, you know, I'll give them credit. They decided quickly enough to say, you know what, that isn't the right track. This isn't the path for us. We got to get out. And so they made that decision, and like it or not, Flexport, different dynamics, but similar, ultimately, decision in, decision out. But they're doing it from a much not for the position of strength that Shopify has.
Yeah, and the reality is, I mean, as everybody tries to innovate on all these business models, failing fast is really important. So, you know, I do give Shopify like kind of 2 thumbs up for making that decision, because that was a big splash, and that took some cojones to say, all right, we screwed up and get out of that quickly. So that's a big plus. And
yeah.
I mean, Marty, you and I were on a very similar engagement with a logistics company for a while. And, you know, that company's still chugging along, and they've got one of the biggest logistics partners in the United States. And at least they know this is a long-term thing, and we've got to build it on tiny margins. So therefore, you know, and again, that comment that just flashed through before, logistics is basically lending money at really short interest rates.
Yeah, and even I see this one comment: fail big or fail fast. So I think that's relative, right?
Yeah, they fail big and fast.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all relative to the company making the decision. And so, in Shopify's case, they failed big and fast because they are big and we're trying to get bigger. Flexport, and it's all relative. Flexport, you could argue, failed big and fast, but big is different in their context than it was for Shopify. And so everything's relative to the dynamics at play and how big of how big of a bet your company you're making, so to speak. But I would say, regardless, don't let the size of the bet dictate whether or not you've decided that this is no longer your right decision. And however hard that decision is, if it's the right decision to cut bait, you better do it with conviction and move on. And again, it's easier said than done.
Cut once and cut deep. Don't die by 1,000 cuts. So just a side note, the company that I'm currently engaged with, we're using Flexport. The service that we've seen is really good. Their tech stack is well, I say it's better than the rest, but logistics tech is literally green screen. Like, most of it is pretty bad to begin with. But we're starting to integrate full EDI. I can actually Uber see my containers as they're in the ocean and if they divert around a storm. So they're from kind of forecasting and planning into a retail space. Some of that tech is pretty cool. And I think that they're going to help define the industry.
So Shopify made a good decision there. Just on their good decision you said they made there, Jack, Shopify, how does the rest of the report card look for 2023 for Shopify?
Yeah, so most of the businesses that I've been involved with are typically complex and complex from a catalog structure. So I've really never driven that deep into Shopify. And then it's just, the reality is there was this wave. So you start off with everybody rolled their own. Then you had some of the big environments come in. And then the problem is that then you hear this whole headless argument. What I'm trying to do in most of the organizations that I'm involved with, technology is not one of their core competencies. So what we're trying to do is give them an environment that A, scales, B, doesn't require a ton of maintenance and a ton of support to run it. And so when you look at Shopify, one of the challenges are that they've got a really cool infrastructure, but you got to pay a tax if you use outside credit card processing. All right, that's a problem if you're global or international. And then the next thing is you really can't edit the shopping cart. All right, if you're a quasi B2B and B2C, that's a challenge. If you have a complex catalog structure, like highly customizable goods, like everything comes in as a flat SKU. So, I love Shopify. I love what they've done to innovate. But for me, it's never been relevant with the clients that I've had. Like I spent 3 years as an EIR with General Electric, building all of their parts selling digital catalogs for all their businesses, locomotive, oil and gas, aviation, bunch of others. And the reality was one of our senior people was on the board of Shopify or on the board of Shopify, and they tried to push it and it just didn't work for that. So, I love what Shopify is doing, but to really transition to enterprise, like they got to make it simpler.
Yeah, and I think actually speaking of simpler, I just got back from an event in LA where there was a notebook mentioned, and I just wanted to bring up the notebook here. What do you think, Vinny? What's in the notebook?
I've only read page 4, Rick, and I was pretty shocked at what I saw. Lots of scribbles of animals, not much else in there. But no, what would you say the report card looks like going into a long, cold winter for Shopify?
Look, I mean, the good news for Shopify is that I think they're I've written a lot about this. They're attacking on a lot of fronts. There are not many companies that are going after their traditional SMB entrepreneur. Yeah, Jared, that's the notebook. Come on. Let's highlight it, man. How do we get this?
Yeah, no, Shopify has nailed the SMB.
And they don't have to play defense there. And the good news about playing defense, if any Eagles fans will know, is that now you can focus on the offense.
Oh man.
He had to go there.
You bring in Jalen Hurts, and he almost gets it done last week.
First time in recorded history that we lost to the Jets.
Yeah. I refuse to give any airspace to this narrative about my Eagles. So they lose a game. Let's move on. We're going to get back to the Super Bowl this year. But listen, I'll give you 5 quick things here, right? So Amazon checkout with Prime. Don't do it unless you do everything on Amazon Prime, right? Like unless you're an Amazon dependent brand, checkout with Prime, terrible idea. Big commerce, right? Calling themselves enterprise. I think they're undercutting themselves. I've made that comment before. Shopify getting out of fulfillment, great. Going up market in enterprise, I think it's more of a marketing pitch and angle right now than anything else. I'll give them effort. They're making some partnerships. They're making some noise. Whether or not the product has made one iota of a change error, who knows? But they might get a hit rate on enough of them that work out. Flexport drama, TBD. We'll see. They've made their change, and we'll see where they end up next year. I'd be shocked if IPO is anywhere. I think Rick made a comment on this lately. If they IPO anytime in the next 2 years, if ever, I'll be shocked. But we'll see.
You know what? You're going to hear in the next couple of years, Maersk, KKR, somebody like that will come in and take them out.
Probably. I mean, valuation for them is going to be an issue, right? Because they did get to a certain spot, but at some point there's going to have to
once their balance sheet starts to suffer, then valuation goes out the window. Right. And how do we, recover 70% of what we invested?
Yeah. Speaking of IPO, we just had a big IPO here recently. Klaviyo.
Yeah, what's the right way? I still don't know how to say that.
Let's have a show of hands for Klaviyo.
Everyone
in the audience,
comments for Klaviyo with the A, long A. Everyone comment for Klaviyo, short A. Maybe a schwa sound.
I love the arms folded in the pic, Rick. Looks pretty cool.
Yeah. So Klaviyo raised, a little less than $1 billion in capital. Good idea? Not good idea? What do you guys think?
I think that this is going to kill the company because the problem is now they need quarterly growth. So I mean, it's great that they had a good IPO. It's great that they didn't fall off.
Why wouldn't you IPO this company?
It might have been better in the private markets because the challenge that you have is that once you're public, you've got to focus on quarterly numbers and wait till their first quarter comes out that they had somewhat meh growth. The shorters are going to come out. I love the platform. I love what they're doing, but quite honestly, in what I'm using them for right now, literally they're just sending email.
Yeah,
we're not using any of their automation because all the cool stuff that they're trying to do, we've displaced with our CDP. So I just think that they've got to continue with that balance sheet. They've got to get really creative and they've got to really innovate to stay relevant and to keep that growth up.
And NDR says Klaviyo.
They're wrong. But
NDR, you're wrong.
Listen, I'll come at it slightly similar, but a little bit different than what Jack said. I don't think it's going to kill them that they IPO'd. I think they, without being in the room and knowing the dynamics, they likely had to at some point. I think from a financial perspective, again, they're one of the outliers. They've positioned themselves IPO and IPO relatively successfully in this market. I think long term, unless they find some way of diversification and expansion, I do think they will eventually kind of just flatline a little bit, right? They're not necessarily a growth vehicle as a product organization. They're a good product, but not necessarily something that you would invest in over the long term. And so I think that they need to find a home, and short of finding that home via the private market through some type of exit or merger, I think IPO likely was something that they felt compelled to do because they had the opportunity to get the right results with their current financial situation. And when you raise money and you got the board members pushing for that, at some point you gotta find an off-ramp, right? And so I think
100%.
they probably made the decision they had to make. It turned out relatively successful for them, but long term, I don't know. TBD.
100% agree with you, Marty. If you raise money, as soon as you raise your first VC dollar, you're just setting a ticking clock for when you have to exit or you find the public market. And I could not disagree with you more, Jack, about staying in the private market. It's just not a viable path.
Yeah, it's not the problem. It just gets really challenging for them to continue to innovate. So they have to start immediately.
From a product perspective, I completely understand where you're coming from, Jack. I just think the business reality is they had to do something. They had to go public if they didn't have an exit.
Yeah.
So
I mean, look at this profitability. It's interesting. Like they really in the early 2022, they were like, "Holy crap, we gotta go public next year. Let's lay off half the company."
How contingent on Shopify success is Klaviyo? Is one reliant on the other? If Shopify stopped growing, where does it go for Klaviyo?
It's 90% contingent.
Yeah, it's a huge risk.
So 90% contingent.
And once the growth doesn't come, they're going to be squeezed on price. They push their price up. Their market cannot afford the product. That is a huge risk.
That's a challenge, and they're going to get more margin pressure. Ideally, as kind of an operator, I'd love to see somebody consolidate that stack. give me a CDP, give me SMS, and give me email, all in one integrated capability. So buy somebody like Blue Conic, buy Attentive, and put this all together so that it's easier. You've got a bigger Chinese menu, because right now your menu is, okay, let me get some marketing, email automation.
You speak in my love language, Jack.
Love language here.
Klaviyo in NDR's form.
Clio.
They one of the big challenges is they're going to build all these products and then they got to sell them and convince anyone they're in this market. It's not going to work. Like if they have 10 years to wait, yeah, great idea. But in the real world, they're going to need to start buying some companies and fast if they're going to make any progress.
Yeah.
Who's with 100%. Me? Who's with me on the chat?
Oh,
yeah, and listen, I think there's a related side note here is that
I think everyone left the chat. Fuck.
There's a related side note for those who partner with Shopify here as well, right? Like, a number of these folks who have allowed Shopify to get on their cap table, that have kind of gotten in bed with Shopify. It's a little bit like the merchant deciding whether or not you want to sell on Amazon and how much you want to rely on them, right? So at some point, there is, what's the saying, right? Juice worth the squeeze. It's beholden on you to maximize your opportunity with someone like Shopify. And I don't blame Shopify at all for the angle that their take on this, right? They're maximizing the value that they are providing. On the other end of it, you got to know what you're getting into. If you're diving into that pool, you got to make sure you got to figure out, are there other avenues for you to bring in while you're taking advantage of being part of this bigger ecosystem and this cash flow influx. You got to figure out, how can I use some of that to build up a little bit of a defensive moat and mitigate my risk over the long term, right? So you take that short-term risk, getting involved in that type of business relationship, that partnership. If you're not doing your job to then use that to build up a little bit of an insulation around you elsewhere, then you're missing the opportunity, right? You're just living in the short term and you're not being very strategic about it.
That's wow.
Bombshell.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, Marty nailed it with kind of the Amazon analogy, because the problem is, for years and years, you had so many people who were out of it, out of Amazon, wouldn't deal with it. Then they realized they had to be in it. And you really need to have a defined strategy when you're going to engage, how you're going to engage, and to what extent.
Or at least own that you're not, right? And say, just own that you're not, and then ride that wave as long as you can. And maybe to some degree, some of these folks have. So, but
yeah, I mean, you can't ignore the revenue opportunity and the partnership, but you've got to focus on diversification, because again, if you're too highly concentrated, you're too susceptible.
100%.
100%.
So how do we rate 2023 on the whole so far as we get into holiday season? What are we going to give it out of 10?
6 or 7.
We got 2 6s, Marty.
Hold up fingers.
Hold up fingers.
Type in the chat.
I'm gonna go 7. I'll go 7.
I'm going 6.5.
But I'm looking at it from a different lens.
6.5.
Oh, look at the way you did the half. I like it.
I'll just say, I'm just ranking it from a perspective of like activity that is shaping the future. I'm probably ranking it different than what maybe you guys are looking at it as, but I think it's a fairly active and what will prove to be a shape-forming year in the industry. A lot of correction, a lot of shift, and going back to certain principles and focus areas, and that's going to dictate what the next 2 to 3 years in the industry is going to be. So 2020 dictated how we got here. 2023 is dictating how we're going to spend the next 2 to 3 years, based on how all the shift has happened across the industry, VC, layoffs, etc.
Yeah, shit has happened? What do you mean shit has happened? I'm still cleaning the shit off of me from Convoy's explosion yesterday. It got all in my hair. It's like a bad bar fight.
Oh man.
I remember 2 or 3 years ago, we saw like almost $1 billion invested in logistics in like a period of 6 months. Ship Bob, Ship Hawk, Ship whatever, Ship my mother-in-law. I mean, like everybody got $1 billion, and it was crazy. And it only took a couple of years for that to all shake out.
Yeah, I'll
So the
leave
future-
the people references to you guys.
So the future's not all bleak, is what you're telling us, Jack, right?
There's hope. There's
It's
hope.
going to be a quick shakedown.
I mean, there's always hope. You know that in the lead up to a presidential election, there's always consternation. You know, 2 months before the election, you're going to see interest rates are going to come down, money's going to flow again. But we're still, like Marty said, we're still on that COVID hangover with all that free money. And, you know, this year it's about bolstering the balance sheets.
Oh,
making sure
speaking
what
of the
you're selling is
election,
profitable.
ooh, what's
Uh-oh.
going on here? Do we have a speaker in the house yet? No.
I thought we agreed we wouldn't
Why
speak
would
about
we need the
sports or
government to
politics.
operate properly?
We've been
I
good.
actually like it. That means they can't screw it up any worse. So,
How
like, nothing
screwed
will
up
happen.
is this country on a scale of 1 to 10?
How what?
Let's hold up hands again. How
Wait,
screwed up is the
restate the
country?
question.
How screwed up is the country?
Oof.
I feel
Oh.
bad because I'm taking the shot from a distance.
I'll go. Are you saying wait 0? You going
saying
zero,
it's zero?
Rick?
I don't know.
It's A-OK.
I think I lost my
He lives on
My
the Upper West
scale.
Side. He's in a bubble.
I think I lost my scale. I think we're screwed to 11.
It depends.
The
Listen,
dial goes to 11. This one goes to 11.
It depends if we're grading on a curve here, because I think you could argue this globally, but if we're talking about just U.S. in general, yeah, I'm probably still back to a 7. A little bit, you know, I'm not doomsday, but it's certainly not it's not neutral either. So this is definitely this is a period of change across the board.
Yeah, I mean,
You probably don't
globally,
want to see a hockey stick, right?
Especially not if it's bashing you in the head.
What kind of bar fights do you go to?
Well, we are close to Canada here in New York City. Canadians don't be fooled by their mild-mannered demeanor.
Oh yeah, they
Sure.
just pulled out like 41 of their diplomats right out of India.
That's right.
It's interesting. I feel like we're in like
Is
in
Canada
the-
trying to become relevant or something or interesting?
in the football match, Vinny, I think we're in like extended time where like the ref has the clock, but no one else knows what the clock is. But we're just gonna keep playing until the
Yes,
ref
till
tells
someone-
us to go home.
Till someone kicks the ball out of play when we decide
Yeah.
we're all ready to get out of Dodge. Well, we kind of traversed that when we started talking sports and politics. Sports was okay. Politics is kind of hitting the curve. So what I want to get from you is
Bring it
closing
back home,
comments.
Benny. Bring it back home.
Thanks, Marty. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. You know what that means for me, right?
Yeah.
And it is 5 o'clock here. So we're going to have a 2-minute wrap up right now. So what I want to get from you is, what are the things we can look forward to in the last quarter? Jack, going with you because you're on the front line right now.
It's going to be a rough year. There's going to be heavy discounting. You know, January is going to be pretty sober. And I think you're going to see continued layoffs, continued push to optimize, drive margin. You know, it's going to, I'm not really bullish on the fourth quarter.
So, and I'll take a slightly different approach on that. I think I actually think Q1 is going to be a little bit of the relative dumpster fire. I think Q4 will probably chug along a little bit. I agree. There's going to be, you know, super heavy discounting, and, you know, margins and profits aren't going to be, you know, where people would hope or had seen or expected in the past. But I think they'll, you know, it seems like for whatever reason, consumers are still spending regardless of the economic concerns or dark clouds.
Not in LA, man. Not with the writers' strike.
Oof.
Well,
It's
yeah,
over.
Listen,
It's all done.
I'm talking more.
But the problem is that they're not redialing up any of the shows until like around Thanksgiving.
Well, listen, generally speaking, I think I'm shocked at the writers thing. I'll just address that. I'm shocked the writers thing is still going on, right? But
Stay on target.
I'll stay on target is right.
We got
I
1 minute
generally
left.
think, like, listen, it's going to come in generally okay. I think the forecasts that are that I've read at least are seem fairly on target and reasonable and conservative, and I wouldn't disagree with most of what I've seen. I've seen Adobe and a few others that put out some numbers, and everyone's calling out how much discount and all that's going to happen.
Have you seen how
but
much
I think
Adobe
it's
charges for
Q1
their
is
shit?
where we're going to have to watch what the after effects are. There you go. Stay on target.
So Rick, we're going to bring it back in and give the last word over to you. And before we do that, we'd love to know what people think of the Watson weekend, the first Watson weekend. Rick, what are your thoughts? Will we be doing it again?
We will definitely be doing it again. Look, I think the world needs an outlet like this, and bringing people together, having a little fun. What the hell?
What?
We're still here.
Can I be AJ Hawk in
Rick's reaction to something I clearly
lost
don't,
it.
I'm not aware of?
We've lost the narrative.
It's still there.
Rick is
All right.
lost and can't be
I
found.
think
We've lost the narrative. Hopefully you guys had fun. I think we're definitely going to be doing this again on a regular basis, either weekly or bi-weekly. And we'll have a new cast of characters each week. I mean, look, let's be honest. Some of you guys, and we won't name any names, are going to get the hook.
Well, I don't know which window you're looking at. You know, in the Brady Bunch window, everybody's lined up differently.
You're
I
Marshall.
think we're both on that chopping block, Jack.
Just
So
have the guts to tell me straight to my face.
Go out with a bang, Jack. I think we're both on the chopping block. Go ahead. Say something that's going to be crazy and go viral.
Yeah. I am the least viral person I know.
Let's hope you're not infected. But as far as the Q4, I think, look, let's take it back to SaaS. I think we have not hit peak explosion yet. There's still a lot of companies that have yet to explode, and I think over the next 6 months we'll see that. So I think that'll be interesting. I think Q4 will be slightly up from last year's Q4, depending on who you are, which is generally good. The consumers are still like YOLO, like it's no tomorrow, and that's going to propel it. Until next year, until everyone realizes like the music stopped and there's no chair to sit down in. So
the reality is there's two parts of SaaS. There's service as a service and there's software as a service. And that's what I don't think SaaS has figured out yet.
Yes.
You've got great tools, but people in-house don't know how to do it.
Last word, where can people hear more about the Watson weekend?
People can hear more about the Watson. Where can people hear? On LinkedIn, duh. You got to go to LinkedIn to hear more about the Watson weekend. Go to my profile, Rick Watson, and we'll announce the next one there. If you haven't smash the follow button. What they say, like and subscribe, or whatever I don't know. I think they say that on YouTube. I read that somewhere.
I feel like I should cut you off now. Save it for myself. We almost got there.
All right.
Hey, guys. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. We look forward to getting into some more topics on the next Watson weekend. Play us out with the outro music, Rick.
We're jamming.
Is that what you call it?
Rick is now a DJ.
We're
out.